Hey everyone, this is Miss Blakesley, or at least it's my head up here in the corner. Today we're just going to go over a little mini lesson on food webs and take a look at our impact as humans on the food webs and the ecosystem. So this should be a little bit of a review for us, even back to elementary school. Food chains, we're just looking at the passing of nutrients and energy up a sequence of organisms that consume each other. And food webs are going to be multiple food chains interconnected in the ecosystem. We're really going to take a look at the relationships between these organisms and the flow of nutrients and energy within the food web. So we're just going to take a look at a basic food chain. We are starting at the lowest trophic level, that's what we will call each level, with our producer, which is typically a plant. We move up to the primary consumer, that is then consumed by the secondary consumer, all the way up to the apex predator, which may not have any natural predators, but it will still die eventually. Those nutrients, that energy that is transferred up the chain, will then go to the decomposers. Once it is decomposed back in our soil, it will circle all the way back to our producer, the circle of life. And that energy is originating from sunlight in those plants. Taking a look at a food web now, it is just a little bit more complicated version of a food chain. We are taking a look that all of these organisms are interconnected in the ecosystem, and I want you to just realize that organisms can be at different trophic levels. The same animal could be a primary consumer in one food chain and a secondary consumer in another food chain. And our nutrients, our energy is circulating between all of these organisms in this ecosystem. Taking a more in-depth look at how energy is moving in our food web, starting with the primary producer, we have 100% of that energy from the sun. When the primary producer is consumed by the primary consumer, only 10% of that energy is usable. 90% of that energy was lost as heat to the environment. That applies as we move up the trophic levels in this specific food chain all the way to the apex predator with the least amount of energy available from the original producers. We're also going to take a look at nutrients cycling through. Nutrients will be lost as organisms die and are decomposed, as well as when organisms produce waste, and that ends up back in the soil all the way to the start with the primary producers. Next, we have a more specific example of what the food chain could look like in Georgia, in our ecosystem, with some of our native organisms. We are going to start with the Bermuda grass. As you will notice, there are 5,000 kcals of present energy. When the mole cricket consumes that grass, it is only able to use 500 kcals of the original energy present. Then when the green anole consumes the mole cricket, we only have 50 kcals, and all the way to the top with our coyote, he only gets 5 kcals of that original energy that was present. So as humans, how are we playing a role in these food webs? How do we impact what is going on? Overhunting or overfishing could remove certain natural prey for predators and impact what they are eating. Habitat destruction could lead to extinction of certain animals or driving them out through emigration. Introduction of invasive species can have significant impacts on local ecosystems in food webs. If you're a cat lover like me, look at this little cutie pie. Your cat, when it goes outside and catches a mouse or a bird, it does not belong in that food web. It is invading into the natural ecosystem, and that can have impacts on what prey is available for the consumers who need it. Pollution can also have impacts on our local animals, on our plant life, and what nutrients are present. So we definitely play a role on what is happening in food webs. And the key takeaway is that we need to be considerate of how we're impacting our animal and plant life. Thank you to SlidesGo for this super cute template that I used. And thank you to these resources for providing me with some helpful information. Thank you to everyone who watched.